Good afternoon, everybody. It's going to be our Summary Markets episode 141. As always, we're going to talk about the weekly calendar. We're going to get into ES, NASDAQ, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and we're also going to talk about some dollar and forex kind of correlations. So let's start off with the calendar. So looking at Monday, it's pretty quiet actually, not much going on. We do have Chicago PMI at 9:45. We have core CPI on the euro at 6 a.m. So that's going to be pre-market for the US. But there's really nothing too major on Monday for the dollar. Moving on to Tuesday, we do have the ISM manufacturing PMI and the JOLTS job openings because that is the start of the month. So we will have all that first week of the month data coming out this week. So that will be high impact at 10 a.m. Then moving on to Wednesday, we do have high impact FOMC, obviously on the 2 o'clock, and then we have the press conference at 2:30. This is an actual FOMC meeting. This is not one of the minutes, so they will be raising rates at this meeting. Now, the question is, how much are they going to raise rates by? I believe currently the market has it priced in at a near certainty that it's going to be a 75 basis point rate hike, but it could be a 50 basis point rate hike or a 100 basis point rate hike. But I think the majority of the market is pricing in 75. So if it's 75, that will have that will be what the market is expecting. If it goes to 50 or 100, that will be an unexpected event. So watch out for that. Then we have also the ADP non-farm employment at 8:15. So that'll be pre-market on Wednesday. And then there is nothing after the FOMC on Wednesday. Moving on to Thursday, we do have the ISM PMI at 10 o'clock. We got a couple of smaller numbers coming out in the pre-market with the unemployment, the non-farm productivity, and the unit labor cost as well. All of that's going to be pre-market right for the bell at 8:30. Moving on to Friday, we have the average hourly earnings at 8:30 in the morning, non-farm employment change at 8:30, and as well as the unemployment rate at 8:30. So all of that is going to be pre-market. And then one more thing to look out for pre-market on Friday would be the ECB speech at 5:30. So that's going to be around the London Open, not the US Open. But all right, moving on to the levels here. We're going to start off with ES as always. So one thing I wanted to take a look at before we got into the levels to look for this week is let's look at how the profile developed last week. So looking at the previous 5 days, if we draw out the weekly profile, we can see where all the major levels were being traded. Now, to start off, we have the POC at around 38.48, around that 38.50 level. So we have a major POC level there. You can see the POC node goes from like 38.60 down to 38.30. That's also right around the monthly VWAP. The monthly VWAP was trading around 38.60. So we really needed to trade above that level. Let me clarify. That is the monthly VWAP close of the previous month, not the monthly VWAP for October. Usually when I refer to the monthly VWAP, the only monthly VWAP that I use in my trading is the previous close, which if I show you here, I can go to this chart. And if we go to the daily, you can see the dotted line right here. If I hide our other indicators, these are the previous monthly VWAP closes. So this would be the VWAP close for September. So that's where the majority of the volume was trading around the close of September. Okay, so you can see that we tried to stall off that level a couple times on the Thursday and Wednesday candle. We also stalled there pretty hard on Friday, and then it actually started to break above it. But now we closed above that level. So that is definitely a good sign. The weekly closing above that level, the daily closing above that level. We're also getting above these older monthly VWAPs from back in around before September. But you can see these monthly VWAPs were acting as major levels moving forward. You can see we bounced off that level around early September, gave you a very strong bounce. Then we failed on the August monthly VWAP and just absolutely nuked there. So we did not want to see a failure of that monthly VWAP moving forward. So seeing that weekly close above that level is definitely a good sign. So looking at the weekly profile again, we do have a couple of major nodes that we can look for moving into this week. You want to watch that 38.90 and that 39.11. Those are a couple of the major nodes inside the upper tail here. And then if we get down below the POC, you want to watch for that value area low around that 95. Okay, so moving on to the levels we want to keep an eye on this week, we can go ahead and mark out those levels that we just mentioned. So value area high, and let's go ahead and just dash these. We have the value area low there. Let me go ahead and grab this one here. And then we have the POC at 47. We're going to dash that as well, just so we know that's the weekly level. Then we're going to turn on our daily profiles. And we're going to take a look at some levels from these daily profiles. So that level is basically overlapping there. It overlaps with the POC and the value area low. So we're not going to mark out all of those levels. We're just going to take the weekly level there. There is a level right here that does not overlap. So we're going to go ahead and mark out that previous value area low. There's also a level that doesn't overlap right here. It kind of overlaps. It's like in the middle. We're going to go ahead and mark that out as a previous value area high. And then moving forward, we don't have any local levels to the upside here because we are breaking a massive resistance. So what we're going to do is we are going to grab this lower tail here from Friday. We are going to extend this to the upper tail, and this would give us a tail repair / tail imbalance trade, which would be somewhere around 39.81. Okay, so we will mark that out. We're going to get rid of that box there. So that will be the upper target moving forward, probably before the FOMC meeting, so Monday or Tuesday. One thing we really have to watch out for, we're not going to know for the next 3 hours, but the thing you want to watch for the most this week is the FOMC weekly open. So the weekly open is going to come in at 6 p.m. Eastern, and whenever we have an FOMC meeting on Wednesday, we want to watch where that weekly open is, because typically what's going to happen is Monday and Tuesday, they are going to balance out. They're going to have those D-shaped profiles. And what's going to happen is if they try to break out into a very strong trend, like let's say we have a day that looks like Friday, you can see how Friday was basically just straight up the entire day. If we had a day like that on Monday or Tuesday going into a Wednesday FOMC meeting, those are typically going to get faded. What I mean by faded is if it pushes very strongly in one direction, let's say to the upside, it is very likely going to come back the next day or even at the end of the day on that same day. So let's say Monday starts out and just absolutely runs, and then it closes just as we closed on Friday. Very likely going to be bearish on Tuesday or on Wednesday going into the FOMC meeting, and that weekly open is going to act as that magnet level that you want to see price come back to. Okay, so if we have any strong pushes away from the weekly open, either to the upside or the downside, you want to be looking for mean reversion trades going back into that weekly open as a magnet. Now, I can't mark that out here because we don't know where that weekly open is going to be, but we can assume it's going to be somewhere close to the weekly close of last week. So we can just mark out, and let's say it's going to be somewhere around 39.23. We'll go ahead and adjust that in 3 hours when we actually have the weekly open. Okay, so just to recap, bullish target for next week is that tail repair around 39.81. And then we have these bearish targets also acting as support around 74, 61, 47, 26, and then all the way down to 96. Okay. Moving on to NASDAQ, we're going to do the same thing here. Let's turn off our daily profiles. We're going to look at the weekly profile here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to draw out our weekly profile here. Some major levels we want to keep an eye on are the POC node right here. We're going to dash that just to know that that is the weekly level. We're going to mark out the value area low and the value area high. Go ahead and dash that as well. And we're just going to say that basically anywhere around this POC, this major POC node here, is going to act as support. So keep an eye around that level for any major buy pressure. If we do start to lose that level, you do want to keep an eye on the value area low to complete that value retrace, possibly down to 247. And then we do have a little bit of a node down here that we could also keep an eye on, which would be around 112. Now, looking at this upper tail here, we're not actually closing on the high like we did see on ES. So we do have a little bit of resistance above us. So we're going to mark out this node right here as a major resistance point. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get rid of this weekly profile. We're going to bring back the daily profiles, and we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to mark out the weekly high, excuse me, which is around 731. And that is going to act as a major resistance. And then finally, for the target, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to mark out the lower tail, make sure we're getting it as close as we can. We're going to bring that to the upper tail. You always want to start at the value area. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to go ahead and mark out the tail repair. Doesn't have to be exact, but you want to get it as close as possible. Okay, so if we go for a tail repair going into Monday, Tuesday, that would lead us up to 826 on the upside. So the resistance levels we want to use are 674, 734, and then 826. Support levels are 572, 478, 247, and then 111. And then finally, for the weekly open, we're just going to guesstimate it's going to be around this level right there, and we will adjust that when we see the weekly open in a couple hours. Same thing for NASDAQ. You want to keep an eye on that weekly open going into the FOMC meeting. Okay, going into Bitcoin here, we are finally starting to get some action on Bitcoin. I feel like the last 5-6 summary markets, we have just been saying, okay, buy low, sell high, here's the range low, here's the range high, just trade these levels. But now we are finally starting to see some action. We're breaking that range high, and we are getting into our target levels where we were looking at that fair value gap from 20,800 all the way up to 22,800. So we're starting to hit that beginning of that fair value gap, and it's already starting to top out on that level. We can see about 3 candles wicking that level. We have the October 26th, October 29th, and October 30th candles all hitting the start of that fair value gap and kind of wicking and selling off. So if we can start to hold above 20,800, we have this entire fair value gap that we can begin to fill in. Now, obviously, there are some major levels in between this level. So if we do want to mark out, and it's actually better to probably do it like this, let's grab this wick zone right here. And that would be an obvious target / resistance zone. So anywhere around 21.5 to 21.8 would be a major target area. And then obviously look for the upper zone around that 22.8. But if we can't stay above this level, and this acts as kind of a deviation, and we kind of deviate from this range high, and we start to sell off back into the range here, you want to be looking for the middle of the range around 19.2, or even all the way back to the low of the range around 18,000. Okay? So keep an eye on how we retest that range high there. All right, moving on to Ethereum. Funny enough with Ethereum, we've already finished filling in that fair value zone. So the fair value zone would have been around 1520 to 1656. These are the same levels we've been talking about for the past few weeks. So hopefully if you guys got that breakout, you were able to catch those targets. The upper target around 1656 was almost the high to the dollar. We did hit that level and then start to sell off pretty rapidly. So we have filled in that fair value zone. The next major level we want to keep an eye on is around this area right here, which actually might be better if we mark it out like this. Kind of that wick zone right there around 1700. So if we do start to break above that level, look for 1700. But for now, we do want to look for a retest of that 1500. And if we start to lose that 1500, it is most likely going to come back and retest that range high around 1400. Okay, so 1500 is the first major support, 1530-ish if you want to be exact. And then if we lose that, look for 1400. All right, finally, let's move into some dollar correlations here. So we have not been seeing any major correlations on the 10-year note slash 10-year yield, but on the dollar and on the euro, we have been continuing those very strong correlations. So the dollar is still continuing its negative correlation, and the euro is continuing its positive correlation. What that means is if the euro continues to find support here, and we can actually hold back above the $1 point, then it will look very bullish for ES going into the FOMC. But if the dollar continues to push higher here and breaks above like 114, 116, then that is very bad for ES. It looks like the dollar kind of has that rollover top formation where we're putting in lower highs and we're not showing any significant buy pressure pushing us back into those highs. So you do want to watch out for that sell-off on the dollar. If that does sell off, that will be bullish for ES, but it has been continuing this uptrend for quite some time. If we zoom out here, you can see this uptrend on the dollar is very long lasting. If we go to the weekly here, you can see it's been going on for basically the entire year. So we are starting to hit kind of where that trend support would come in. So most likely the buyers will begin to come back on the dollar pretty soon. So obviously this week we have the FOMC. So all this analysis you have to take with a grain of salt. Basically, whatever the market decides to do on that FOMC rate hike, it's just going to annihilate all the analysis that you've tried to do before that meeting. Okay, so just know that on Monday and Tuesday, it is most likely going to balance out. If it is not balancing out, we don't see that D shape that we typically like to see on Monday and Tuesday going into the FOMC, then you want to look for that mean reversion style of trading going into the meeting. Now, after the meeting, it is very likely going to break balance. So if we are balancing out on, say, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then after the meeting, that Thursday and Friday, they are most likely going to break out of balance. That's when we start to see those P-shaped days, those lowercase b's, or even those profiles that look like trees. We call them tree profiles, or they're called thin profiles, typically seen on trend days. Okay. So look out for that. It's definitely going to be a market moving event. One more thing I wanted to mention here. If you guys are in Discord, I did make a ton of changes to the Discord. We're doing some spring cleaning, even though it's in October. We are making a ton of changes to the Discord. We consolidated a lot of the channels. We just made it a lot easier to follow, a lot easier to kind of find the channels that you are looking for. I also added a playbook channel, which has a lot of our setups that we like to use for our ES scalping. So if you guys have been following us in our scalping journey from this day-to-day basis, definitely take a look at that playbook channel. I have written it out with picture examples, entry, stop, targets, all the things you need for a playbook. It is in there. So definitely check out that channel. Another channel that we added was the settings channel. So you guys always ask me for my NinjaTrader settings, for my Tradeovate settings, for my TradingView settings. I have put all of those settings and those workspaces in that settings channel. So make sure to check that out. That will definitely help you guys out. If you're definitely new to Discord, if you're coming in, you're like, all right, how do I get all my indicators and settings looking like his? Just go to that channel. It will definitely help you out. But that is it, guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. We will be streaming Monday through Friday for the rest of the week, 9:30 in the morning as always. And we will be doing some teaching streams most likely on Monday and Tuesday. If you guys want to stop by for those will most likely be at 3 p.m. Eastern. So we will be doing the footprint teaching stream. So I'll be teaching you guys how to read footprint charts and kind of how we use NinjaTrader to read those footprint charts. But all right, guys, that is it. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe if you guys are new. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.